Back in 2018, me and some of my friends have grown a passion for urban exploration. The very first location we used to visit was a clinic that went bankrupt in 2001 and was left abandoned ever since. Never having visited an abandoned place before, I was quite hesitant at first. But then I've watched some YouTube videos about that particular clinic and discovered that it had a room full of CRT monitors, IBM personal computers and what seemed to be a dot matrix printer. So I stopped caring about any risks. I just knew that this was a place worth looting.
Hier ist aber dieser eine Lautsprecher, der sieht doch gut aus.
Unfortunately, most of the stuff was missing when I got there. The only thing I could get my hands on was this IBM Model M keyboard. It had the words "From the lab, broken" written on it. The detachable cable was also missing, and despite of its missing functionality, I fell in love with that keyboard. I just knew that I had to get myself a working Model M one day. As I moved out of my parents' house a year ago, I decided to get myself a new Model M from Unicomp. I knew that I was gonna do a lot of typing intensive work that year, so I really wanted to have something making that work a bit more fun. Being quite satisfied with the new Model M doing its job, I didn't pay much attention to the original, supposedly broken IBM keyboard. But as time went by, my curiosity increased. I really wanted to know how broken that keyboard really was, so I've ordered a suitable PS2 cable. And it turned out that the keyboard was alive and well the entire time. So I've been using both keyboards for quite some time, and let me tell you, I definitely prefer one over the other. Time for the intro. Here are my criteria: price, aesthetics, haptics and sound, compatibility, durability, and warranty and serviceability. Okay, let's get started with the price. In order to get my new Model M shipped to Germany, I had to pay $119 for the keyboard itself, $68.59 for shipping, and an additional import tax of €36.93. When trying to get a used IBM Model M on German marketplaces, you are likely to pay a price ranging from €100 to €150. But if you are living in the US, the Unicomp Model M seems to be the cheaper option. There are quite a lot of things to watch out for on online marketplaces, of course. I'd really recommend you to look up those model numbers before buying anything, as some of those Model M's being sold turn out to be rubber dome ones. So if I had to give a point, I'd give it to Unicomp, as you know what you're gonna get in beforehand without bad surprises. Aesthetics. Well, this is a matter of personal opinion, of course. I really appreciate the fact that Unicomp at least tried to have a design of their own. I really like that harsh contrast being created by the black shell and those white keys. But when comparing it to the original Model M in its sturdy, iconic beigeness, the Unicomp Model M started to look like some kind of beta prototype thingy to me. Especially those blue status lights in the upper right corner look like they were extracted from some kind of Blender project file, and when inspecting both cables we are entering a realm of objective truth. This cable looks rock solid, it's flexible and quirky, and if it should fail for some reason it will allow you to detach it without putting the blame on any other components. You might argue that this is a matter of durability, but to me this cable is an expression of absolute independence, thus making it a piece of art. Haptics and sound. I'm not sure if my microphone is accurate enough, but the IBM Model M keyboard has a distinct metallic sound that my Unicomp keyboard is lacking. Speaking of haptics, the keys on the Unicomp Model M feel a bit more sharp and defined. I've also noticed that the Unicomp keys required a tiny bit of extra force when being pressed down. When listening to my gut feeling, it's definitely in favor of the IBM Model M. But to be fair, those differences may be caused by the intense wear and tear that keyboard went through, so no points for both. Compatibility. When buying a new keyboard, my personal rule of thumb is PS2 over USB. That's because a PS2 keyboard can easily do both. If you want to use your keyboard on an old pencil machine, just plug it in directly. And if your computer happens to support USB, just get yourself an inexpensive adapter. But if you want to do it the other way around and use a USB keyboard on a PS2 exclusive machine, there's a lot of room for disappointment. Most of the USB input to PS2 output adapters you can get are passive, meaning that they simply connect a few pins to each other and then expect the hardware of your keyboard to use the PS2 protocol adaptively. The majority of USB keyboards does not support that, and the Unicomp Model M is no exception. I really wished that to be the case for a $120 keyboard, so when buying a new Model M you'll have the option to pay $3 extra for a native PS2 output. But with an IBM Model M you won't have to worry about that. You're either gonna get a cable with a PS2 connector or a chunky AT plug. Normally I'd say that this is a draw, but there is one particular thing putting the original IBM Model M at a disadvantage, and this is the missing Windows key. So if you don't want to depend on your mouse the entire time, you'll need to remap some other key in your operating system. That's a point for the new Model M. Durability. This is one of the key aspects that made me want to make this video in the first place. This Model M was freshly manufactured in January of last year. I didn't do anything unusual to it, I simply kept it on top of my desk the entire time until the first flaw started to appear. In early September I've been typing some stuff and all of a sudden it got unresponsive and I was greeted by Windows's default unplug sound. When I tried using a different USB port, the issue would reoccur shortly after. Out of desperation, I've even done a full reset of my operating system, but there was nothing I could do to fix the issue. Keep in mind that my original Model M was being used in a lab for 10 years straight and then left to rot in a moist abandoned building for nearly 2 decades, and despite all of this just works fine. Being slightly pissed off but still trying to keep my manners straight, I've sent Unicomp a mail leading me to the next and final point. Warranty and serviceability. So, this was the first message I've sent to Unicomp.
Dear customer support, I've been using my new Model M USB for the last 8 months and don't want to type on anything else ever since. Unfortunately, it has grown a will of its own and decides to get unresponsive occasionally. The LEDs in the upper right corner also start to flicker during this phase. I assume that there's a loose connection within the cable or that the controller board got damaged somehow. This issue is reoccurring on 3 different computers. This particular unit was manufactured on January 5, 2021 and the serial number is 0265936. What's the fastest way for someone living in Germany to get his unit repaired or replaced? I wouldn't mind to repair it myself if I could get my hands on a suitable screwdriver and some replacement components. Thank you for keeping the Model M alive.
One day after, this was the reply they sent me.
Hello, you may need to speak to one of our engineers about possible repairs since you're in Germany. I will assign your ticket to them and they will get back to you shortly. Regards, Kelly.
So I was waiting. After 10 days of waiting, I've lost my patience a bit and asked them,
I don't want to sound too pushy, but when can I expect the engineers to reply?
Then, after 3 days, I finally received an answer from one of the engineers. Throughout this video, I'll call him Randy.
Hello Felix, this indicates a problem with either the cable or the logic card. You can test the cable by flexing and bending the cable along the length of it, to try and find an area where bending will reliably break or repair contact with the keyboard. This indicates the cable is broken internally, and must be replaced. If this is the case, we can send a replacement cable for your use, or if you are handy with a soldering iron and don't want to wait, replacing the USB cable with another standard cable would work fine. If the cable is not damaged, then the logic card may have received static damage or may be defective. A replacement may be provided if the keyboard has not suffered any warranty voiding damage, and swapping the logic cards is trivial if you have the proper tools to open the keyboard. Fortunately, both of these issues are somewhat easy to fix with replacement parts. Thank you for your advanced troubleshooting with different computers. Thank you, Randy.
Just keep in mind, getting that one reply took 2 entire weeks in total. When I've ordered my keyboard in January of 2021, I was quite glad about using my hard-earned money to support a small, traditional, humble and honest American business, but any rinky-dink keyboard manufacturer from Asia would have done a better job this far. But there's always some room for reverse improvement. This is my answer I sent the exact same day.
I have just tried to flex and bend the cable but did not manage to cause a complete break of contact. Even when the cable is kept still, the LED lights start flickering occasionally. The keyboard has never been opened, as I don't have the proper tools at hand yet. I have a hard time believing, but it seems that the logic board, of a product I've paid €200 for, simply died after 8 months of use. I don't really want that keyboard to become a victim of my poor soldering skills. So if there's a non-bureaucratic way for you to send me a replacement board plus cable, I would really appreciate that. Can these components be replaced with their PS/2 counterparts? If so, I wouldn't even mind paying some kind of surcharge for that. Please tell me how we can proceed. Thank you in advance.
I know. I've asked Randy quite a lot of stuff. I was quite skeptical of that USB hardware and really didn't want the replacement logic board to be the same one that recently died on me. I knew that Randy was going to evade that question, but at least I tried. 20 days later, I've received this reply.
It's been about a month since I opened this ticket. I'd be glad to hear from you again.
Oops, that was mine, sorry. But shortly after, this is the reply I've gotten.
It's likely static or power surge damage of some kind. Simply faulty logic cards are rare, but they do happen. Fortunately, there is no soldering required for a logic card or cable replacement, just tools to remove them from touching the contact points. Can you give me your order number so we can process your order as a warranty? Thank you, Randy.
Being completely satisfied with my replacement keyboard at this point, I just sent them this one-liner.
The order number is number 113,526.
Then, 11 days later, I remembered that they still had an old shipping address of mine, so I started caring again and gave them my new one. My intuition told me that they didn't ship any replacement parts yet, and so I was right. 10 days later, Randy told me that he'd get the cable sent out by Monday. Then on Monday, I've received a separate email telling me that a replacement logic board and a replacement USB cable were on their way to my old shipping address where my parents live. To me, this was an absolute climax of dissatisfaction. Giving so many f***s about a customer would require a special kind of expertise, that's for sure. At the end of November, I finally had the replacement parts in my mailbox. Yes, my very own mailbox. It turned out that they messed up something when sending that email, but the physical letter containing those replacement parts had the correct address written to it. Anyway, I'd rather stick my d into an AMD cooler than correspond with those guys at Unicomp ever again. With those replacement parts and a hex nut screwdriver at hand, I tried to open up that keyboard. And no matter how hard I've tried, I did not manage to loosen those screws. I have no idea what tool they've used when manufacturing my keyboard, but they definitely haven't had the consumer in mind. However, the original Model M was extremely easy to unscrew. If you are gifted enough, you won't even have to use a screwdriver. The old plastic pen and lighter trick should work just fine. So I stopped caring about the so-called new Model M altogether and continued to use the genuine one. Even if your used IBM Model M you bought from an anonymous seller does not come with a warranty, there's nothing money cannot fix. Just get yourself a second or a third one as a donor unit. There's a huge variety of things you can do, and all of them are way better than waiting for Randy to finish his 3-week smoke break. IBM Model M wins.